What's going on, guys? Northeast RC here, back for another video. Got some crawling videos going on, hanging out here in the garage, and I want to go over a couple of things about the Outcast 8S and some things I've learned after owning this truck for a while. Been having troubles with the differential in the back, blowing differential gears. Learned a ton of things about the truck the hard way, but I did learn. And mostly it was just being out of lazy, just wanted to use the truck and not go through the right steps and procedures. But I want to go over that with you guys in this video. So we're going to hop down the bench. I got a differential taken apart, and I want to talk about my experiences with blowing diffs and things you can do to combat that. So let's take a look. All right, so here's a look at the center differential, guys, all pulled out of the truck. Now, what happened to this thing is the same thing that happened to my rear one 3 times. The screws backed out of the housing of the differential, and it caused the planetary gears to chew up against the spider gears. Now, I finally got smart and bought myself an aluminum housing for the rear differential, put that back together, and knock on wood, haven't had any trouble with it. The problem is, out of the factory, there's no quality control. They're not thread locking screws like they should, and you should go over your truck every nut and bolt and check everything on your truck. Go through your diff, go through all your diffs, make sure they're full of fluid. If not, change them right from the get-go. Make sure all your screws are tight. Make sure you have thread lock on everything. Now, the reason why this one went, this is an aluminum housing, which is nice, but there isn't an ounce of thread lock on these screws. All the screws that came out of this center diff don't have 1 ounce of thread lock on them. So they backed out and ended up chewing up the planetary gears against the spider gears. So lesson learned here is go through your truck, go through all your screws, nuts and bolts, and make sure you thread lock things that need to be thread locked. But getting back to the truck, the rear diff and the front diff on this do not come with an aluminum housing for the differential. You have to buy that. So I did change the rear one. I still need to do the front one before I put this back together. I'll be air plugging the center one. I got 500 diff fluid in the rear, and I'll have 500 in the front. Now, what I'm running in this truck is I have the Hobby Wing Max 5 setup with the 800 kV motor. I got the Power Hobby 701 MG servo with the Hot Racing servo saver. I did upgrade to the Stupid RC one-piece braces that go from the front and the back. These are all one piece. You don't have any of that plastic on the end that snaps off when you hit jumps. I got a Power Hobby double fan to keep the motor cool, and I'm running a 39 Pinion 39 spur 1-to-1 ratio on the 800 kV motor. Also, while I have this apart, I'm going to take all this factory grease out, and I'm going to swap that out and get that re-greased. I do use Valvoline. This is the high temp red grease. This is just like the red and tacky. You can pick this up at your local parts store for like $7 for this can, and it's the red grease. I put that in all my diffs, so I'll get that. I'll get this old grease taken out of there for the center diff. We'll get that packed up with the Valvoline, and once I get this all together, I'll air plug it. Once I get my new gears, get it all back together, then I'll do the front diff. But the main takeaway of this, guys, is just make sure that all your stuff is thread locked and you're running the aluminum housings on your diff. Because putting this kind of power through it, I wish I saved my old one. I threw it out though. My original rear one, once it busted the gears inside there, it blew a hole through the plastic. I mean, if you got an aluminum one, it's going to be a little hard to do that because, number one, the screws aren't going to back out on you, so you're not going to have an issue. But that's key. You got to change these to aluminum so you can thread lock them, and the thread lock will actually work, because you can't thread lock into plastic. It just doesn't work. I mean, if you want to be really cheap, you could epoxy them in there, but then, when it's time to take it apart, you're going to have to break the thing apart. I wouldn't recommend doing that. But then again, taking all this stuff apart too is pretty straightforward. Your main center bracket here is 4 bolts. You'll pull your Carter pins for your cross braces, and then there's 4 bolts for your ESC and servo, and then 2 bolts for your motor and the center transmission. So it's pretty straightforward to take apart and take out, not a big deal. And then putting it back in is just reverse to taking it out. So pretty straightforward there. This truck is pretty easy to work on. You can get access to everything fairly easy. There is a couple other things I want to show you on the chassis, so let's take a look at that. All right, so I have all the electrics out of the truck. I need to clean this grease out of here in the center. I'm going to get this chassis all cleaned up. But running the 800 kV motor, if you guys are going to run a big cam motor in this truck, this bell crank housing for the steering, it rubs against the end of the can of the motor. So what I did is I took a Dremel, and I just Dremel sanded this with a drum sander on it, and just took off some material out of this. So now when the can goes back in here, it'll clear. This bell crank won't hit no more. So that's one of the things you got to do. Once you get one of these EXBs, or even if it's not an EXB and you're putting a big cam motor, you definitely want to take a drum sander on your Dremel and just sand down that bell crank so the end of the can doesn't hit anymore. All right, with all that being said, I'm going to get all this stuff cleaned up, all the parts that I am keeping. I got to get finished cleaning these all up and get these ready for when the gears do show up. I can put this all back together and get it back in the truck. Always double check your gaskets. Make sure your gaskets are good. If not, change them. It's a cheap item to change. These gaskets are in really good shape, but I do have new ones. I'll probably just put new ones in there just to be safe. All right, guys, so hopefully you enjoyed the video. Leave a comment down below. And remember, till the next time, keep building and bashing.